The night had been long and restless for Keanu Reeves. He had just returned from a long shoot overseas, his body tired, but his mind awake. The silence of his home was comforting, yet as he walked through the wide hallway and into the living room, he noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. In the corner of the room, curled up on the floor, lay the maid Sophia. There was no blanket, only her own arms, holding the boy close, as if shielding him from the world. Keanu stood frozen, his heart twisting. The scene was both heartbreaking and beautiful. Sophia had been working in his house for only a few months. She was quiet, respectful, and always careful never to take more space than she needed. He had known she had a child, but she rarely spoke of him, keeping her personal life hidden. But here they were, exposed by exhaustion. She had chosen the hard floor instead of asking for help, instead of disturbing anyone. She had chosen to give her child comfort, even if it meant her own pain. Keanu's single quotes, his chest ached as he stepped closer. The boy, no older than 6, clung tightly to her dress, even in sleep. His small face carried traces of struggle, dark circles under his eyes, cheeks thinner than they should have been. Sophia's hair was messy, her arm bent awkwardly, yet she did not stir. For a long moment, Keanu simply watched. He thought about how easy it would have been for her to ask for a bed, a blanket, or even a corner of the guest room. But she had not asked. She had carried her burden silently, just as he often carried his own. The image pulled something deep. Inside him, remembered his own childhood, the loneliness, the nights when he longed for comfort and stability. Remembered the times when he had nothing, when he had felt invisible in a world too big and too loud. And now, standing in the soft light of his living room, saw those same struggles reflected in Sophia and her son. He knelt down quietly, careful not to wake them. His hand brushed against the cold floor where they slept, and his throat tightened. Why are they here? Why didn't she tell me? The questions pressed heavily against his mind. That morning, when the sun slipped through the curtains, Sophia woke. Suddenly, her eyes widened when she saw Keanu standing nearby. She scrambled to her feet, embarrassed, clutching her son's hand. I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves, she whispered, her voice shaky. We didn't mean to bother you. We'll leave right away. Keanu shook his head softly. Stop, you don't need to leave. Why are you sleeping here? Sophia lowered her gaze. Didn't want to trouble you. The landlord locked us out of our apartment last week. Couldn't find anywhere safe. I thought just one night here would be enough until I could figure things out. Her words pierced him. One night? He asked quietly. So all this time, you've been working here during the day and sleeping on the floor at night? She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. I couldn't let my son sleep outside. I thought maybe if we were quiet, no one would notice. Keanu's heart swelled with both sorrow and admiration. She had endured silently, not asking for pity, not demanding anything, only fighting to give her child dignity in the little ways she could. He glanced down at the boy, who clung shyly to his mother's leg. What's his name? Keanu asked. Gently, Matthew, she whispered, brushing the boy's hair back. Keanu knelt down to meet the child's eyes. Hi, Matthew, he said softly, his voice warm. You're safe here? The boy looked at him silently, his eyes wide, then slowly gave a small nod. Sophia's tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered again, I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves. We'll leave if you want. I didn't know what else to do. Keanu stood, his face calm, but his voice firm. No, you're not leaving. No child should have to sleep on a floor, and no mother should have to carry that alone. Sophia stared at him, stunned. From now on, Keanu continued, you and Matthew will not sleep on the floor. You will stay here, in the guest room, until you have a place of your own. You don't have to hide anymore. Her lips trembled. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, he said softly. Just let your son rest. It's all the thanks I need. As Sophia clutched her son to her chest, overwhelmed with relief, Keanu turned away, his own chest heavy with emotion. He knew this was not just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something that would test them all. Because beneath the simple act of giving them a bed, he sensed a deeper story, one filled with struggle, secrets, and choices that would change their lives forever. The next morning, the house felt different. There was a quiet hum in the air, something Keanu couldn't quite name. As he came down the stairs, he heard soft laughter drifting from the kitchen. It was the kind of sound that carried both relief and nervousness. He paused at the doorway. Sophia stood by the counter, helping Matthew butter a piece of toast. The boy's face was brighter than the night before. His small hands trembled as he tried, but Sophia guided him gently. Her voice filled with patience. Keanu smiled faintly at the sight before stepping inside. "Good morning," he said softly. Sophia spun around, startled, almost dropping the knife. "Good morning, Mr. Reeves," she whispered, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Matthew glanced up at him shyly, then hid behind his mother's skirt. Keanu sat at the table watching them quietly. "You don't have to call me Mr. Reeves all the time," he said after a pause. "Just Keanu is fine." Sophia hesitated. "I don't want to disrespect you." "Respect isn't about titles," he said gently. "It's about how we treat each other." Those words seemed to soften her, though she still lowered her eyes. Matthew peeked out again, and Keanu leaned forward with a smile. "I do like toast, Matthew." The boy nodded slowly. Keanu reached over, ruffling his hair. "Me too. I think it tastes better when someone helps make it." For the first time, Matthew smiled small, but genuine. The moment filled Keanu with warmth. But beneath the warmth, a thought lingered. How long had Sophia and her son been carrying this struggle alone? Later that day, while Sophia tidied the living room, Keanu found her folding blankets carefully. He noticed the patches on her son's small backpack sitting nearby, worn and faded from years of use. "Sophia," he said quietly, "why didn't you tell me sooner that you had nowhere to go?" Her hand stilled on the fabric. She looked down, her voice trembling. "Because I didn't want pity. I didn't want anyone to think I was taking advantage of kindness. I thought if I stayed quiet, I could manage on my own." Keanu's chest tightened. "But no one should have to manage alone. You carry too much for just one person." Her eyes glistened, though she quickly turned away, blinking back tears. That evening, Keanu took them both out to the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. Matthew ran toward the flowers, his laughter echoing softly through the air. Sophia stood quietly beside Keanu, watching her son. "He hasn't laughed like that in months," she whispered. "He was always afraid of losing me, afraid of being left with nothing. Sometimes he wouldn't even sleep because he thought someone would take me away." Keanu glanced at her, his heart heavy. He deserves to be a child, to laugh, to dream, to sleep without fear. Her lips trembled. "That's all I ever wanted. For him, but the world hasn't been kind." Keanu turned to her fully. "Then let this house be different. Let it be a place where he doesn't have to be afraid." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she nodded. But as the days passed, new tensions quietly began to grow. Some of the household staff whispered behind Sophia's back. They questioned why she and her son were living under the same roof, why Keanu had allowed it. Though they never said it in front of him, Keanu could sense the change in the air. One evening, while walking past the staff quarters, he overheard two workers speaking in low voices. "She's just a maid. Now she's living like she owns the place." Exactly. What if she's using him? Rich people get fooled too. Keanu's fists clenched. He stepped away quietly, his mind burning. He hated gossip, but what worried him more was how these whispers could affect Sophia and Matthew the next morning. He found Sophia quieter than usual, her eyes lowered as she worked. Finally, she admitted, "I heard what they said last night. Maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't be here." Keanu shook his head firmly. "No. Don't let their words decide your worth. They don't know your story. I do, and I decide. Who belongs in this house?" Us. Her eyes widened, searching his face. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe his words. That night, as Keanu walked past the guest room, he paused. The door was slightly open, and inside he saw Sophia asleep. On the bed with Matthew curled against her, they looked peaceful, finally resting without fear. But as he watched them, another thought struck. Him helping them was not just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something deeper, something that would challenge him in ways he had not expected, because kindness always comes with responsibility, and responsibility always tests the heart. The following week brought a mix of quiet joy and unspoken tension. Keanu noticed Matthew slowly beginning to trust the house. The boy would explore the garden, peek into the library, and sometimes even sit in the living room while Keanu read. He didn't speak much, but his presence grew stronger each day. It's like a flower cautiously opening under the sun. Sophia, however, carried herself more carefully than ever. She smiled when she worked, but Keanu could see the weight behind her eyes. Sometimes he found her staring out the window, lost in thought, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. One evening, as Keanu was preparing tea, he found her in the kitchen scrubbing dishes long after everything had already been cleaned. "Sophia," he said gently, "you've been standing here for an hour. What's wrong?" She froze, then shook her head. "Nothing, sir. I don't want anyone to think I'm lazy." His voice softened. "Sophia, working harder than everyone else won't silence gossip. It won't erase judgment. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone." Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly turned away. "Maybe you believe that, but I know how people look at me. I know what they think. I'm a maid, and now I'm living under your roof with my son. They won't ever understand." Keanu's chest tightened. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't need the world to understand. You only need to know that you and Matthew are safe here. Nothing else matters." She nodded silently, though he could see her doubts still lingered. The next day, the tension finally spilled over. Keanu was coming down the stairs when he heard raised voices from the hallway, near the staff quarters. "You think you're special? Because the boss lets you stay here?" one of the maids sneered. "We've worked here longer than you. None of us have rooms inside the house." Sophia's voice trembled as she tried to respond. "I never asked for this. I'm only trying to do my work," another staff member muttered harshly. "Everyone knows what this looks like. You're using his kindness. Maybe you planned it all along." Before Sophia could reply, Keanu stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying steel. "That's enough." The hallway went silent. All eyes turned to him. Keanu's gaze swept across, the staff firm and unyielding. "Sophia and her son are here because I made that decision. She did not ask, and she did not plan anything. She has carried more than any of you know, and from now on, I will not tolerate gossip or cruelty in this house." The staff shifted uncomfortably, lowering their eyes. Keanu turned to Sophia, his expression softening. "You don't need to explain yourself to anyone, not here." Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she simply bowed her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. That evening, as Matthew played quietly with toy blocks, Sophia approached Keanu in the study. Her voice was low, filled with hesitation. "I should leave." Keanu looked up sharply. "What do you mean? I don't want to cause trouble for you. The other staff already resent me. I don't want Matthew growing up in a place where people whisper about us. Maybe it's better if we go." Keanu shook his head firmly. "Sophia running away won't protect Matthew. He needs stability, not more uncertainty. You." His voice softened. "You deserve kindness too. If the problem is judgment, then it's not you who should leave. It's their judgment. That must change." Tears filled her eyes. "Well, why are you doing this for us? You barely know me." Keanu leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible, to carry pain quietly, to have people assume the worst without ever knowing your story. I can't change the world, Sophia, but I can change this house. I can give you and Matthew the dignity you deserve." Her tears spilled freely then, though she quickly wiped them away. "You don't know what this means to me," but Keanu noticed something else in her voice, something deeper. Gratitude, yes, but also fear. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Keanu found himself restless. He walked through the quiet halls, his footsteps echoing softly. As he passed the guest room, he noticed the door slightly ajar. Inside, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her sleeping son. Her face was pale, her eyes full of worry. She whispered softly as if speaking to herself. "Please, Matthew, just hold on. We'll be okay this time." Keanu stood in the shadows, his chest tightening. This time, the words echoed in his mind. What had happened before? What hidden struggles still chased her and her son? He returned to his own room, lying awake long into the night. The image of Sophia's tear-streaked face would not leave him. He had thought offering her shelter was enough, but now he realized there was more, a story buried beneath silence, a story that could change everything if revealed. The following days carried a heavy stillness through the house. Sophia worked as she always did, careful, quiet, diligent, but Keanu could feel the weight she carried. He had seen it in her eyes that night as she whispered to her son. She was hiding something that pressed on her heart so deeply that even in sleep it would not let her go. Keanu knew he could not ignore it anymore. If he was going to protect Sophia and Matthew, he needed to understand the past she was running from. One afternoon, while Matthew played in the garden, Keanu found Sophia folding laundry in the guest room. The late sunlight streamed in through the window, painting the room in gold. He leaned against the doorway for a moment, studying her. Finally he spoke. "Sophia, I need to ask you something. Please don't be afraid, but I have to know what happened before you came here." She froze, her hands gripping the fabric tightly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she sat down on the edge of the bed, her shoulders slumped. Her voice was faint when she answered. "We weren't always like this," she began. "I had a husband once, Matthew's father. His name was Daniel. At first he was kind, gentle. He promised me safety. But after Matthew was born, everything changed. He'd lost his job, he turned to drinking, and soon his kindness disappeared. His words became cruel, his hands heavy. I tried to protect Matthew, but it only grew worse." Keanu's jaw tightened, his heart aching at every word. "One night," Sophia whispered, her voice shaking, "he told me we were nothing without him. He took our savings, left us with debt, and walked out. I thought it was over. I thought we could finally breathe. But a few months later, he came back, demanding money I didn't have. When I refused, he threatened to take Matthew away." Her tears slipped down her cheeks as her voice broke. "I grabbed my son and ran. I worked wherever I could, cleaning houses, washing dishes, sleeping in shelters. Every time I thought we were safe, he would find us again. I never told anyone. Because I didn't want pity. I just wanted to survive." Keanu felt his throat tighten. He moved closer, his voice calm but firm. "Sophia, is he still looking for you?" She nodded, her eyes filled with fear. "The landlord who locked us out, he knew Daniel. I think he told him where we were. That's why I was so afraid. If Daniel finds us again..." Her voice trailed off, her body trembling. Keanu placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Listen, to me, you don't have to run anymore. Not while you're here. No one is taking Matthew from you." Sophia broke down, covering her face with her hands. For the first time, she allowed herself to weep openly. That evening, Keanu sat in his study, his mind heavy. He thought of Sophia's words, of the years she had lived in fear, of the quiet strength it must have taken to carry her child through such storms. He also thought of Matthew, his laughter in the garden, his shy smile slowly growing bolder. They deserve peace, Keanu thought. And if her past comes knocking, I'll be the one to answer. His resolve was tested sooner than he expected. The next night, while the house slept, Keanu heard a faint noise outside. A car engine idling. He moved to the window, pulling back the curtains slightly. Parked near the gate was a dark vehicle, headlights dimmed. His heart clenched. Daniel, the next morning, Keanu didn't tell Sophia what he had seen. He didn't want to frighten her. Instead, he quietly called Mark, his trusted friend, asking him to look into Daniel. Mark arrived later that day with grim news. Daniel is in the city. He's been asking around, looking for Sophia. He owes people money. Dangerous people. He wants leverage, and he thinks taking Matthew back will give him power. Keanu's fists clenched, his voice low. He's not touching that child. That evening, as Sophia tucked Matthew into bed, Keanu sat with her in the guest room. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried fire. "Sophia, Your past has found you. Daniel is here. Listen carefully. You are not alone anymore. I will not let him near you or your son. Not now, not ever. Her eyes widened with fear, but also with something else, hope. For years, she had carried the burden alone. Now, for the first time, someone stood beside her, but outside. In the shadows beyond the gates, Daniel was already watching. His eyes cold, his mind restless, his anger growing, and Keanu knew the real battle had just begun. The house felt heavier with each passing day. Sophia went about her duties, but her eyes darted often toward the windows, as though she expected a shadow to appear at any moment. Matthew sensed the tension too. Though Keanu tried to keep his days filled with laughter in the garden and small adventures to the library, the boy clung to his mother more than ever, refusing to leave her side. Keanu knew this was no ordinary fear. Daniel was near, watching, the quiet idling car in the night, the whispers Mark had uncovered. The way the air itself seemed to thicken, everything pointed to one truth. The storm was about to break. One evening, Keanu gathered Sophia and Matthew. In the living room, the fireplace glowed softly, casting light over their faces. He leaned forward, his voice low but steady. Sophia, I need you to listen. No, Daniel's close. But I want you to understand something. Clearly, he is not walking through that door. I will not allow it. You and Matthew are safe here. Sophia's lips trembled, her eyes wet. You don't know him, Keanu. He doesn't stop. He doesn't care who gets hurt. He only cares about power. Keanu's gaze did not waver. Then he's about to learn that power built on fear means nothing when faced with love and courage. I've fought battles before, but none as important as this one. Later that night, Keanu barely slept. He paced the hallway, checking every lock, every window. Finally, near dawn, exhaustion caught him, and he dozed off in the study chair. He woke suddenly to the sound of glass shattering. Keanu bolted upright, his instincts sharp. Footsteps echoed from the back door. He rushed quietly through the hall, his heart pounding. When he reached the kitchen, he froze. Standing in the dim light was Daniel. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled, his face twisted with anger and desperation. Where is she? Daniel growled, his voice rough. Keanu stepped forward, calm but firm. You need to leave. Now. Daniel sneered. So it's true. The famous Keanu Reeves playing hero. You think you can keep my family? From me. Keanu's jaw tightened. Family. You abandoned them. You broke them. You don't get to call yourself a father. Daniel's eyes darkened, and he stepped closer, his fists clenched. You don't understand. She owes me. They both owe me. I've lost everything, and they're my way back. Keanu stood tall, his voice sharp as steel. Sophia owes you nothing. Matthew owes you nothing. They are not your way back. They are your victims, and I will not let you hurt them again. For a moment, the two men locked eyes, the room heavy with silence. Then a small gasp broke it. Sophia stood in the doorway, clutching Matthew tightly to her chest. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. Daniel's gaze flicked to them, and he smirked. There they are, my family. Sophia shook her head, her voice breaking. No, Daniel. We are not yours anymore. We never will be. Keanu moved slightly, in front of them, shielding them with his body. Daniel snarled, his voice rising. You think he can protect you forever? He'll leave one day, just like everyone else. Oh, 1 mile. Always find you. Keanu's voice thundered through the room. Not this time. At that moment, Mark stepped in through the front door with 2 officers he had called ahead of. Time? Their voices were firm, commanding. Daniel, step away. Daniel froze, rage flashing across his face. You called the police. Keanu's gaze did not shift. I did what a father would do. I protected them. The officers moved quickly, restraining Daniel despite his furious resistance. His shouts echoed through the halls, filled with anger and threats. This isn't over, Sophia. You can't hide forever. But for the first time in years, Sophia didn't cower. Holding Matthew tightly, she whispered through tears, "Yes, it is over." As the officers dragged Daniel out, silence filled the house once more. Sophia collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking, her tears flowing freely. Matthew clung to her, his small arms wrapped around her neck. Keanu knelt beside them, his own eyes wet. "It's over now. You're safe, both of you." Sophia looked at him, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to do this for us?" Keanu shook his head. "Yes, I did, because no one should ever face fear alone. Not you, not Matthew." For the first time, a genuine smile broke through her tears. But as Keanu looked at her and the boy, he realized this was not the end of their journey. It was only the beginning of building a life without fear, and that would be the hardest. Yet most beautiful battle of all, the days after Daniel's arrest felt strangely quiet. The echoes of his anger no longer haunted the hallways, but the silence was not immediately comforting. Sophia walked through the house like someone learning how to breathe again, still looking over her shoulder as if expecting him to appear. Matthew clung to her more tightly than before, afraid to let her out of sight. Keanu noticed it all. He understood. That freedom did not come the moment a door closed on danger. Freedom was a slow journey, built day by day, choice by choice. And if he was to truly help them, he had to give them not just protection, but also a chance to heal, so he began small. Each morning, he invited Matthew to join him in the garden. Sometimes they watered flowers, sometimes they sat in silence watching birds. At first, the boy stayed quiet, hiding behind Keanu's side. But soon he began to laugh again, chasing butterflies, his bare feet pounding the grass. Keanu saw the child's spirit slowly awaken, and every sound of laughter felt like a victory. With Sophia, he gave her space. He never demanded stories of her past, never pressed her to talk about Daniel again. Instead, he showed her through action that she and Matthew were welcome. He invited her to sit at the table with him, to join conversations about simple things, books, music, childhood memories. Little by little, she stopped standing at the edges of rooms and began sitting down as though she belonged there. Yet one evening, as the sun set in shades of orange and pink, Sophia approached Keanu while he was sitting on the porch. Was soft, almost afraid. "You've done so much for us," she whispered. "Sometimes I wonder why you didn't have to take us in. You didn't have to stand against Daniel. Why risk so much for people who are not even your family?" Keanu turned his head toward her, his expression calm, but his eyes heavy with truth. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone. I know what it feels like to carry pain in silence. When I saw you and Matthew on that floor, I saw myself. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't walk away, sometimes. Family is not who shares your blood, it's who shares your burdens." Tears filled her eyes as she lowered her gaze. "I don't know if I can ever repay you." Keanu shook his head. "You already have. Every time I see Matthew smile, every time I hear his laughter, that's enough. It reminds me why kindness matters." As the weeks passed, something remarkable happened. Matthew began to sleep through the night without waking in fear. He started drawing pictures filled with bright colors, houses with windows, gardens with flowers, people smiling. Once, he brought a drawing to Keanu, showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall man, a woman, and a boy. Above them in shaky letters, he had written home. Keanu stared at it for a long time, his chest tightening with emotion. When he looked up, he saw Sophia watching him, her eyes shining. "That's what he feels now," she whispered. "Safe, like he belongs." In that moment, Keanu realized the unexpected decision he had made that night to give them shelter had turned into something far greater. It wasn't just about safety. It was about giving them a place to heal, a place to hope, a place to rebuild. One evening, Sophia and Keanu sat in the garden while Matthew chased fireflies with a jar in his hands. The boys' laughter filled the air like music. Sophia turned to Keanu, her voice steady but full of emotion. "You've given us more than a roof. You've given us dignity. I thought our story was only about survival. But now it feels like it's about living again." Keanu smiled gently. That's all I wanted for you both to remember. Life can be more than fear. And as the night grew darker, Keanu felt something deep inside him settle. He had faced villains on screen, battles scripted and staged, but this standing between fear and hope, between despair and love, this was the truest battle of his life. And together, they had won.